Hello, this is Miss Schrader. Today we are going to be talking about Murasaki Shikibu, who is the writer of what is referred to as the first novel in history, The Tale of Genji. My students, you're going to need a piece of paper and something to write with so that you can take notes. When you're done, you're giving me somewhere between 7 and 10 sentences about what you're going to learn. The picture you're looking at was done much later than the lifetime of Murasaki Shikibu, but it is showing her in the 17th century and is showing her writing. They're making a point of showing her as being solitude on her own. Now, what you're looking at now is a 17th century ink and gold print fan, for fanning yourself, which is showing Murasaki Shikibu writing. So she was very, very famous then. This is not from her time period, though. One of the first things I need you to remember is that among the Japanese as well as the Chinese, you put the last name first and the first name last. So her name is Murasaki Shikibu. Her first name, her name that people would have referred to her by if they were friends, was Shikibu. She's often referred to as the Lady Murasaki. She appears to have lived between 973 and 1025 CE. In the Heian period, she was a lady in waiting for the empress of the Fujiwara clan. She was a daughter of the Fujiwara's families, but her family had lost money, and so they were kind of desperate for her to find a position. Okay, so in her early or late 20s, she married a man by the name of Fujiwara no Nobutataka, who was quite a bit older than she was. It was an arranged marriage. In those days, apparently, the men could have lots of different wives if they wanted to, and he did. They were married for about 2 years, then he died. During that time, she had a daughter, Kenshi. After his death, she goes to court to become a lady in waiting to the empress. In the Heian period, it was not appropriate for women to know how to read and write in Chinese dialect in Japan. The women wrote in Japanese. And one of the things that Lady Murasaki was famous for is she apparently was discreetly teaching other women how to read and write in Chinese. The Japanese written language was considered less sophisticated, and her novel, The Tale of Genji, is written in Japanese. This is a 16th century painting of Lady Murasaki, once again, not from her time period. She's famous not only for writing The Tale of Genji, but also The Diary of Murasaki Shikibu and a volume of poetry. And she is considered one of the 100 most famous writers in the world, not just Japan, the world. Um, Her diary, the diary of Murasaki Shikibu, has a lot of pretty racy stuff in it because the people at court lived a pretty racy existence. Her diary talks about men sneaking into women's rooms to have sexual relationships with them, and then them sneaking out, and how they make arrangements to do that by the way they hold their fans and the way they look at each other in public, and so on and so on. Amazingly enough, the theory is that Murasaki Shikibu herself was not involved in this and didn't like it. She was much more conservative about sexual relationships and didn't approve of all of this. So the story is that Lady Murasaki went off to um, the lake or the ocean and was looking out at the moon. She's on vacation. She's thinking about stories and things like that. And she starts to write The Tale of Genji while she is there. And when you see a copy of the book, it is a huge book. She wrote it over a huge amount of time. Now, this picture is from an illustrated version of The Tale of Genji, and this particular picture is called The Perfumed Prince. And I think we probably can't see him in the picture. I think he's probably in the carriage there. But Genji is the son of an emperor and one of the emperor's secondary wives. So Genji isn't going to get to be emperor eventually. And since he doesn't really have a job, he gets to spend all of his time as a young man and on courting ladies and going to see ladies and talking to them about it. And so basically, it's about his love life. And I remember there's one scene where he's gone to visit one of his many girlfriends, and she can't come out to see him because she has just washed her hair, and they wear their hair very, very long. And because her hair is still wet, she can't come out to see him, and he fusses about it. And he says, "Well, why didn't you send me a note telling me that you were washing your hair today?" In time, as Genji gets older, his favorite girlfriend dies. He begins to realize how fleeting life is. He marries a much younger woman who gives birth to a baby who is put forth as Genji's son, but is actually somebody else's son. And Genji dies, and then they start following the life of this child. This is one of the earliest known copies of the Tale of Genji. It was written in the 12th century, so possibly in her lifetime, maybe shortly after her death. Apparently, it is paper decorated with gold, and it is currently in the Gotha Museum, which I assume is in Japan. You can get English versions of The Tale of Genji. In fact, a couple of years ago, one of my students, after we discussed The Tale of Genji, went to the city library and found a children's version of The Tale of Genji. So you could go to the city library and find one that's pretty readable. After the death of the empress, for whom she was a lady in waiting, Lady Murasaki returned to her father's house. She apparently didn't live much longer, just a couple of years, and then passed away. And her father arranged for her burial. And this apparently is the location where her family's mansion was and where she is buried. This is a modern statue of Murasaki Shikibu. It's in the city of Uji, Japan. What looks like cloth that she's holding is actually a piece of paper. So she's become amazingly famous, both among people who are readers and writers, and of course with the Japanese. And the Japanese have created a 2,000 yen note, so money, um, depicting scenes from the tale of Jinji. All right, my students, I want you to give me between 7 and 10 sentences about what you learned, what you found educational and important about Lady Murasaki Shikibu and the tale of Genji. Thank you.